My mother-in-law volunteered to watch our baby, so I could rest. I woke up and found she'd taken him to her church, had him baptized, and posted about saving him from sin. My husband said, "It's not worth a fight." So, I went to a lawyer instead. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who went behind her husband's back. But then again, I never thought my husband would betray me like this. Our son, Eli, was born 6 weeks early. It was a rough delivery, emergency C-section. I lost a lot of blood. He was in the NICU for over a week. I cried every day in that hospital room, watching the machines breathe for him, praying that he'd make it. I don't even believe in prayer, but I did it anyway, just in case. I couldn't hold him for the first 3 days. I could only reach through the incubator and touch his tiny hand. He weighed 4 pounds, 7 ounces. That's it. When I finally got to hold him, I broke down. That moment changed me. I became a mother, and I knew nothing would ever matter more than protecting him. By the time we got home, I was running on fumes. I was healing from surgery, barely sleeping, pumping every 3 hours, and trying to keep this tiny human alive. Eli had reflux and would scream for hours. I started to feel like a failure. I wasn't bonding the way I thought I would. I was tired, sore, and on the edge all the time. That's when my mother-in-law, Margaret, offered to help. Or, as I see it now, when she saw her opportunity. She's always been intense about religion. The kind who quotes scripture in casual conversation and calls anything outside her worldview the devil's work. I'm not religious. David, my husband, used to say he wasn't either, but that changed when we got pregnant. He suddenly started talking about how important tradition was, especially baptism. I said no.
I was clear about it.
I didn't want my child baptized before he could understand what it meant. That was our agreement. I didn't push for any atheist rituals. I wasn't trying to make Eli anything. I just wanted him to grow up and decide for himself. Margaret hated that. She made little comments constantly about how Eli needed spiritual protection, how innocent babies can still be lost to sin, and how a good mother raises her child in Christ. I ignored her. I was too tired to fight. That was my mistake. One Sunday morning, about 3 weeks after we got home, she came over early. David had already left for a work shift, so it was just me and her. "You need rest," she said. "Let me take care of him for a bit." I hesitated. I didn't trust her, not fully, but I was desperate for sleep. I hadn't had more than 90 minutes at a time since Eli came home. My body hurt in ways I can't describe. My stitches were still healing, and I was emotionally fried. So I said yes, with conditions. I told her, "Please stay in the house. Don't take him outside. He's too small." I'm not comfortable with that yet. She gave me this fake sweet smile and said, "Of course, honey. Don't you worry about a thing." I should have known right then. I went upstairs and crashed.
Hard.
For hours later, I woke up in a panic. The kind of panic only a new mom understands, that feeling like something's wrong, even if you don't know what it is yet. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I went downstairs. No Margaret.
No Ellie.
No note. Nothing. I called her. Straight to voicemail. I called David. No answer. I stood in the kitchen staring at the empty car seat base like it might give me answers. My hands were shaking. My stomach was twisted in knots. I didn't know where my baby was. An hour later, Margaret walked in through the front door, humming like it was just another day. She was carrying Eli in his car seat. He was asleep, wearing a long white lace gown I'd never seen before. My heart dropped. "What is he wearing?" I asked. "Oh," she said, beaming. "It's David's old baptism gown. Isn't it just precious?"
Isterte her.
"You baptized him?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. She grinned like she'd won a prize. "Of course. Pastor James made time, just for us. It was such a blessing. Now Eli's soul is safe." I couldn't even process it. I took Eli and went upstairs. I locked the door and cried so hard my face swelled. My son, my 6-week-old, medically fragile baby, had been taken from me, driven across town, handed to strangers, dunked in water, and used as a pawn in someone else's religious fantasy. That night, David came home. I was sitting in the nursery rocking Eli. "You knew," I said. He looked guilty. Wouldn't meet my eyes. "She told me she was going to ask," he said. "I didn't think she'd actually do it." "You didn't stop her," I said. "She meant well," he said. "It's not worth a fight." That phrase set something off in me. Not worth a fight? My bodily autonomy was worth a fight when I had to beg the doctors to delay the C-section by an hour so I could sign forms while coherent. My child's health was worth a fight when I stayed up all night in the NICU. But a forced religious ritual done behind my back? That wasn't worth a fight? Later, I found her Facebook post. There were pictures. Eli in that lace gown. Pastor James holding him over a marble font. Margaret standing behind them like a proud queen. And the caption. "Today I saved my grandson's soul from eternal sin. God's plan is greater than ours." I'm so proud to carry on our family's faith. Over 100 likes. Dozens of comments. People I didn't know praising her for doing what had to be done. That's when something in me snapped. The next morning, I made an appointment with a family lawyer. Not for divorce, yet. I just needed to know where I stood. What my rights were. What I could do, if this ever escalated. The lawyer didn't laugh. She listened. Then she said, "Taking a child without parental consent can be a serious issue, especially when it involves medical or religious procedures. We can frame this as parental interference." I went home and started documenting everything. Every message. Every voicemail. I printed the Facebook post. I wrote down dates and times. I started keeping a log. Because this wasn't over. They think they won. They think I'm too tired to fight. But the thing about postpartum women is, we survive the worst pain you can imagine and keep going. And I've got just enough strength left to burn this down if I have to. I started living like I was preparing for war. Quiet, calculated, and watching everything. I didn't tell David I had talked to a lawyer. I didn't tell anyone. I needed to see what they would do next. If this baptism was really just a one-time thing, or if it was the start of something worse. It didn't take long to find out. The next Sunday, Margaret showed up again.
Uninvited this time.
I was sitting on the couch, holding Eli, who had finally fallen asleep after hours of colic. She knocked once, then let herself in like she always did. "Oh, good, you're up," she said. "I thought I'd take Eli to meet some ladies from our Bible circle." "No," I said, standing up. "He's not going anywhere." She smiled like she hadn't heard me. "It's just for an hour. You need a break." I said no. She froze for a second, then narrowed her eyes. "I'm his grandmother." "I'm his mother." She sniffed and looked around like she was searching for backup. "Where's David?" "At work," I said. "And this isn't his call, anyway. You took him once without asking. You're not doing it again." She stared at me for a long time. Then she said, "It's not healthy to be this controlling. You're sleep-deprived. You're probably dealing with something hormonal." That word, hormonal, cut through me like a blade. I had spent weeks bleeding, sweating, crying, and healing from surgery. I was doing everything for this baby, while she stole moments and claimed them as hers. "You need to leave," I said. She stormed out without another word. That night, I told David what happened. He rubbed his temples like I was the problem. "You need to calm down," he said. "She's just trying to help." "She's not helping," I said. "She's violating boundaries." He got quiet, then said, "You're still upset about the baptism, aren't you?" Of course I was. But it wasn't just that. It was the way she walked into our lives like she owned my child. It was the way he let her. The way he kept minimizing everything I said, like I was too emotional to be trusted with my own judgment. I realized something then. David wasn't just enabling her. He agreed with her. He just didn't have the guts to say it out loud. So I stopped telling him things. I kept journaling. I started recording conversations when I could. I wanted a pattern of behavior. Proof of her interference, and of his unwillingness to stop it. A few weeks later, it escalated again. I was at a doctor's appointment for Eli, just a routine checkup. The pediatrician asked if we wanted to enroll him in the church-sponsored daycare for infants starting at 6 months. What church? I asked, confused. She showed me the brochure, Margaret's church. Apparently, she had put my name down as a pending parent. I hadn't filled out anything. I hadn't even heard of it. When I confronted Margaret, she didn't even flinch. Well, I assumed you'd come around by then, she said. It's a wonderful program. You'd rather leave him with strangers? I was shaking with rage. You sign my name to something without asking me. She shrugged. Sometimes mothers need help making the right choices. That night, I confronted David again. She's forging my name now, I said. Do you not see what's happening? He looked at me like I was being unreasonable. You're blowing this out of proportion. No, I said. I'm seeing it clearly now. You don't think I matter. You think she is the mother. He didn't answer. That silence was louder than anything he could have said. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I moved money, a little at a time, from our joint account to an account in my name. I stopped sharing doctor updates with him. I made sure everything, Eli's health records, daycare registration, future insurance, had me listed as the primary parent. I was laying the groundwork, because now I knew this wasn't just about Margaret. It was about David too, and how they both believed they could erase me from my own child's life, while I bled and suffered and sacrificed to bring him into this world. They picked the wrong woman. A few days after the daycare incident, I received a call from CPS. At first, I thought I misheard. The woman on the phone was calm, professional, but direct. She said there had been an anonymous report, concerns about postpartum depression, unsafe sleeping conditions, and emotional instability in the home. I nearly dropped the phone. She asked if she could come by for a wellness check. I said yes, trying to keep my voice steady. After I hung up, I sat down and shook for a full 20 minutes. I knew exactly where the report came from. Margaret. She hadn't gotten her way, so now she was trying to paint me as unfit. I pulled out my folder, the one I'd been keeping since the baptism. I added a page.
Date. Time.
Details of the call. I printed messages from Margaret. Notes from David's dismissals. Everything. When the caseworker came 2 days later, I was ready. My house was clean. Bottles sterilized. Diapers stocked. Eli was in my arms, calm and fed. I handed her a folder full of documentation, calmly explained the ongoing issues with my in-laws, and gave her my lawyer's card in case she had further questions. She stayed for 20 minutes, took notes, said she saw no cause for concern. Then she left. But the damage was done. I had proof now, not just of interference, but of malicious intent. David came home late that night. I didn't even wait for him to get his shoes off. Your mother called CPS, I said. Do you understand what that means? He stood there like a deer in headlights. She wouldn't do that, he mumbled. She did, I said. Do you want to see the report number? Do you want to see the printouts? I told them everything. I gave them your name too. His face changed. Panic. Not concern for me, but fear for himself. You gave them my name? She told them I was unstable, that our baby wasn't safe in my care. I told them you knew everything and did nothing. That makes you complicit. He sat down and put his head in his hands. I didn't ask her to do that. You didn't stop her either. The next morning, I got a call from my lawyer. I did some digging, she said. Your mother-in-law is still listed as a beneficiary on your husband's life insurance. So is your son. But you're not. I hadn't even thought to check that. The more we looked, the more I found. David had opened a savings account in Eli's name. Margaret was listed as the secondary guardian. She had filled out forms to be able to pick him up from daycare, even though he wasn't enrolled. David had signed them. The plan had never been to help me. It had been to replace me. Little by little, they were building a case that I was unstable. Margaret wanted full access. David was greasing the legal wheels. They wanted Eli to grow up under her roof, under her rules, in her church. They just didn't think I'd be smart enough to see it happening.
But I had all of it now.
Bank statements, documents, legal filings, a paper trail, and something else too. I had leverage. After the CPS call, I didn't wait. I gave my lawyer the green light. We filed a petition for temporary custody, naming David's negligence and his mother's unauthorized interference as the cause. I included the full CPS report, the forged daycare paperwork, and the church baptism photos. The judge granted me an emergency hearing within a week. David was served at work. Margaret found out through him and immediately started calling me nonstop. I didn't answer a single time. My lawyer advised me to go silent and let the court handle everything now. In court, David looked like he hadn't slept. I didn't care. He sat there trying to explain how this was all a misunderstanding, how Margaret was only trying to help. But the paper trail said otherwise. The judge looked through the evidence, then looked him straight in the eye and said, "You had multiple opportunities to protect your wife's rights as a mother. Instead, you enabled someone who overstepped every line. That's not a misunderstanding. That's failure." I was granted sole legal custody of Eli. David was given supervised visitation only, to be reviewed in 6 months. Margaret was banned from contact altogether. The court issued a formal protective order barring her from making any decisions, medical, religious, or educational, for Eli. She was also named in the documentation as a source of emotional interference and deceptive conduct. After the ruling, David begged me not to go through with the divorce. He said he was just trying to keep the peace. He told me he was scared of confronting his mother, that he never thought it would go this far. That was the moment I realized how weak he really was. Not just as a husband, but as a father. He stood by and let his mother weaponize religion, paperwork, and lies, just so he wouldn't have to deal with her anger. I filed for divorce the next morning. I kept the house. I kept Eli. And I made sure Margaret's name was blacklisted from every pediatric office, daycare, and school in our area. But I didn't stop there. I filed a formal complaint against the church that performed the unauthorized baptism. My lawyer argued they should have verified both parents' consent. The church issued an apology letter, publicly. They deleted all photos, made a donation in Eli's name to a non-religious children's health fund, and quietly removed Pastor James from public ceremonies until further notice. Margaret was humiliated. Her online friends saw the apology. Her church circle whispered about how her spiritual victory turned into a legal nightmare. I could have left it there, but I didn't. I sent copies of the court ruling, the forged daycare documents, and the CPS summary to every family member on David's side. I didn't write a message. I just let the paperwork speak for itself. The family split down the middle. Some of them finally saw who Margaret really was. Others tried to defend her, but they couldn't argue with the facts. David moved into a one-bedroom apartment. Last I heard, he was trying to rebuild his life, without his mother's help this time. He asked to see Eli more, but I told him the court would decide when he earned that right back. Not me. Not Margaret. Eli is 2 now. He's strong, healthy, and full of life. He doesn't know any of this happened, and I hope he never does, at least not until he's old enough to understand that his mother fought like hell for him. I still carry the scar from my C-section. It's faded now, but when I touch it, I remember everything. The fear, the betrayal, the silence, and the moment I chose to stop begging for respect and take it back piece by piece. Some people believe revenge means hurting the ones who hurt you. For me, it meant removing them from my child's future completely and making sure they never had the power to touch him again.